right, open up those constitutions too, Bill of Rights. We're getting there, right? We're working our way through. We started way back at the preamble. Then we did the first 3 articles on the 3 branches of government. And then yesterday we did Articles 4, 5, 6, and 7. Remember Article 5, how to amend the Constitution? 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, 3/4 of the states. Finished up with Article 7, the ratification. We started using the Constitution. But we made some changes since then. What do you call a change to the Constitution?
Amendments.
An amendment. We have a total of 27, right? The first 10, what are they called? Bill of Rights. They all came at the same time. Who remembers what year they came in? Now, I'll remind you, the Constitution was written in Philadelphia in 1787. So when did we change it by adding 10 amendments? When was the Bill of Rights added? I remember the year? Mila?
1791.
1791. So not very long, didn't take long till we made some major changes, right? And by the way, once you change the Constitution, an amendment is now part of the Constitution. It's just as much a part of the Constitution as the original 7 articles. Alright, so 1791, we added the Bill of Rights. Who remembers the Federalists, Anti-Federalists? What were the Anti-Federalists about? Leah?
They didn't agree with the Constitution.
They didn't like the Constitution. Federalists, of course, liked it. One of the big things they didn't like about it, you remember the Articles of Confederation, our government was too weak to protect our freedom? Well, the Anti-Federalists thought the Constitution went too far the other way. That it made a government that was too powerful. And they feared that one day the government would become a tyrant and take away our freedoms. Not so sure they were way off on that, but that's another story. So in order to make the Anti-Federalists be more accepting of the Constitution, it was kind of like this. Let's go ahead and ratify it. Let's start using the Constitution, and then first chance we get, we'll fix it, we'll amend it. So we ratified it. We started using it. We elected a president. We elected a Congress. And then first chance we get, 1791, we added the Bill of Rights. And what the Bill of Rights is it's a list of freedoms. A Bill of Rights. A list of freedoms that we, as Americans, believe we have these rights because God gave them to us. The Constitution doesn't give us these rights. The Bill of Rights doesn't give us these rights. We have these rights. They're endowed by our Creator, right? They're inalienable rights, which means nobody has any business taking these rights from us. But we wanted to make sure we put it in the Constitution. Just as a reminder to our government that these are freedoms that we, as people, especially as American citizens, have, that you can't take from us. So always remember this about the Bill of Rights. This is the easiest way to understand it. The Bill of Rights is designed to protect you from your government, from a tyrannical government. That's all the Bill of Rights is for, period. Protects you from the government. Which means the Bill of Rights does not protect you from enemies of our country. The Bill of Rights doesn't protect you from communist China or terrorists. Right? The Bill of Rights does not protect you from your neighbor. The Bill of Rights does not protect you from me. All right? The Bill of Rights does not protect you from your boss or your employer. Who does the Bill of Rights protect you from? The government. Government tyranny. Remember that, and you'll have a good understanding of the Bill of Rights. So as we know, it's the first 10 amendments. Tonight that will be your assignment to read through it for yourself. And it's not that long. The whole 10 isn't that long. But here's a brief version of it. It's just kind of a snapshot of what each of the 10 amendments covers. All right, but we're going to get into the First Amendment today. We won't even finish it. Because the First Amendment could be an entire class, a course, all of itself. In fact, I wish we had that class. A course on the First Amendment. I'd like to teach that. We could do it all year, and we still wouldn't get through with it all. There's so much about the First Amendment. Right? I could go online right now, and within 3 minutes, I could find you 10 brand new news stories that just came out today about the First Amendment. It's constantly in the news. We're constantly dealing with it and what it really means. And whose job is it ultimately to interpret for us what the First Amendment says? Come on, you know that. Yeah, the judicial branch, the Supreme Court. Right? And they've weighed in on that many, many times. And we'll cover some of those. So, here we go, First Amendment. First of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights is the First Amendment, and within the First Amendment, there's 5 very important, very precious freedoms that we have as Americans. Written right down. We have the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the freedom to petition our government. We're going to look at each one individually. We won't get much past the first one today. We might get into freedom of speech. Like I said, it's kind of endless. We could go on forever. So, let's go ahead and read the beginning of the First Amendment. You can follow along in your Constitution, or you can look up here. Here's the first phrase till we get to a semicolon. Congress shall make no law. Wait a minute. I thought that's what Congress does. Don't they make laws? Yeah, the whole point of Congress. What do you mean Congress shall make no law? Well, they make laws, that's their job, but there's some laws they can't make no matter what. That would be tyranny. So we put it in the Constitution, right in that list of freedoms, right in that Bill of Rights, right off the bat. First Amendment. Congress, there's some laws you can't make. And by the way, we've interpreted Congress doesn't just mean the U.S. Congress, it means any level of government. The U.S. government, state governments, Lee County government, no level of government. There's some laws they cannot make. And then it tells us what they can't do. It says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, comma. So let's stop right there. The government cannot establish any religion as the official religion of the United States. We have no official religion. Now, that's not true of all countries, right? Back in those days, in history, did England have an official religion? Yeah, Anglican Church, Church of England, right? Spain, Catholicism was their official religion. Hey, why did all those settlers come and settle the colonies to begin with? Right? The Pilgrims, the Puritans, the Quakers, the Catholics in Maryland, what were they all looking for? Freedom of religion. They were fleeing somewhere that had an official religion. So when we set up our government, we're going to make sure that no one in our government ever sets up any religion as an official religion. Even nowadays, some countries have official religions. Lots of them do. Think about the many countries in the Arab world. Islam is their official religion. You better be a Muslim or else. They don't have freedom of religion. But we're all about freedom, right? Even religion. So, that gets us to the question, is America a Christian nation? Well, now, it depends what you mean. If you mean, is Christianity the official religion of America? What's the answer? No. That would go against the First Amendment, wouldn't it? There is no official religion. Our founders understood you can't force people to believe something. They need freedom, right? Some dictators never get that through their head. You can't force people to believe something. Our founders understand that. Even God understands that. Does God force us to love Him? No, he just says, I love you. And then when we love him back, that's a meaningful relationship, right? How about other people? Can you force other people to love you? No, I can't force my wife to love me. I love her, and when she loves me back, that makes that special, doesn't it? God's the same way. He says, I love you. When you love me back, that's an awesome special relationship with your Creator. But he doesn't force us. Well, our founders understood. Neither can the government force you to love God or anybody else, for that matter. It's always a choice. That's called freedom. So, can you be a Christian in America? Yes. Can you be a Muslim in America? Yes. Can you be an atheist, a Buddhist, whatever? Can you worship your dog? Yeah, you can worship the moon. You can worship your shoes. You can do whatever you want. It's freedom of religion. However, is America a Christian nation? Well, that depends. If you mean Christianity is our heritage, it's our history, it's what our founding was based on, well then, yes, absolutely. You better believe it. Matter of historical fact, our country is a Christian nation. Our entire system of government is based on what we call the Judeo-Christian ethic. That means we get our understanding of right and wrong, what is good and what is evil. We get our whole understanding from the Bible. That's what Judeo-Christian ethic means. Judaism and Christianity are all based on what the Bible teaches of right and wrong. Just as one example, murders against the law in America. Why do you think we looks down on killing other people so much? Well, we like freedom here because of the Judeo-Christian ethic. We know the Bible teaches that is evil. And you know what? It's not that way in every country. There are countries in the world where it is legal for parents to kill their teenage children. And they won't get in trouble.
Why?
Yeah, that's not okay, is it? Because of their religious belief. Especially teenage daughters. They annoy their fathers. I won't get into the details. Do we allow that here?
I'd be dead already.
No, now believe me, there's a lot of parents of teenagers who are frustrated with their kids, but it's not legal to kill them. Alright, thank goodness. Well, where do we get that idea? Judeo-Christian ethic, we know that's not right, that's evil. The Bible tells us that. That's where we get all our outlook on right and wrong. Judeo-Christian ethic. Many of our founders were Christians, not all of them, but many of them were. Our whole Constitution, the whole reason we separate powers is because we know men are sinful. Where do we get that idea? From the Bible, right? So, in that way, yes, our nation is a Christian nation. That's why we put "In God We Trust" on our coins. That's why we put "Under God" in our Pledge of Allegiance. That's why we like to display the 10 Commandments at courthouses that deal with the law, because in the Judeo-Christian ethic, the law comes from God, like the 10 Commandments, where it says, "Thou shalt not murder and steal." Right? So, yes, our heritage, our history, our founding is Christianity. All we're saying is the government can't make Christianity, or any other religion for that matter, establish it as the official religion. That would be unconstitutional. But for us to acknowledge our history and our heritage is not unconstitutional. That's just acknowledging our founding and our history. So while sometimes, as a culture, America may promote or cheerlead for Christianity, that's not unconstitutional. That's just a nod. That's just an acknowledgement to our heritage and our history and our founding. It's not forcing people to be Christians. That would be wrong. It's not punishing them for not believing the Bible. We can't do that. That takes away their freedoms. Any questions on that first part? But that's not all it says about religion. Right, there's a comma. So that means Congress can make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In other words, you get to freely exercise or practice or live out your faith. You don't just get the freedom to believe what you want to believe. You have the freedom to live out what you believe, and the government can't punish you for it. So you can read the Bible, you can pray, you can tell others about Jesus. Right? Other people can read the Quran, they can pray to Allah, they can tell others about Muhammad. Do they have that freedom? Yes, and because of what you believe, it will influence your decisions, won't it? So you're going to be kind to other people. You're not going to be rude to other people. You're not going to disrespect other people. Why? Because that's what our faith teaches us. To treat others the way we want to be treated. The golden rule, right? So we're going to live out our faith. Are we free to do that? Yeah. And so is everybody of every other religion. They're free to live out their faith. Some people, their religion might teach them to be rude to others. Do they have the freedom to do that? Sure. Yeah. We'll just shrug it off. This is freedom. Now, all rights, not just freedom of religion rights, but all rights end when you violate other people's rights. That's where it stops. Remember my silly example, swinging my arm around? It's a free country. I can swing my arm around all I want. It's a free country, but if I hit Hunter upside the head, no. Now I violated his rights, right? My rights stop when I violate other people's rights. It's a dumb example, but gets the point across, right? Well, same is true with your religious beliefs. You can live out your faith, but you don't have a right to hurt other people. Like, I can't say, well, my faith requires human sacrifice, so we're just gonna have to kill people at some of my church services, and they'll just have to understand because freedom of religion, right? Now, the government could step in there, right, because they get to protect the other people's rights too. Silly example, but that's reality, right? You can worship however you want as long as you're not hurting others. Your rights aren't endless, and you can live out your faith. It's what Amy Coney Barrett does. Her faith helps her as a mother. Her faith helps her as a wife. Her faith helps her as a judge. Is there anything wrong with that? No, that's called freedom of religion. And that's how we are, right? It helps us as friends, it helps us as family members, it helps us as students and teachers and co-workers and citizens. That's what free exercise of your faith means. In other words, not only are you allowed to believe how you want, you're allowed to live out that belief, as long as you're not hurting others. Now, this part always hurts me. I love teaching you about the Constitution and how things are supposed to be. But I also have to give you a dose of reality and let you know how things are. Who gets to interpret this again? The Supreme Court. And about 50 years ago, the Supreme Court made a couple of decisions, and we know their decisions are final, right? And we're still dealing with it. And it was never according to the Constitution, but they get to interpret it. They said that it's unconstitutional for children to be taught about God in a government run that would be a public school. You can't allow prayer or Bible reading. That would be unconstitutional in a government run school. Where do they get that? Well, it's the Establishment Clause. They said if a government run school allows the Bible or prayer, then that would be the government establishing Christianity as the official religion. No, it wouldn't. It would be acknowledging our Christian heritage and history, but it's not forcing people to believe a certain way. Still have the freedom. right? And as a result of that, that's why ECS exists, by the way. That's why every single other Christian school exists. You know, there were no Christian schools before the 1960s. We didn't need them. Public schools were basically Christian schools. When I went to elementary school, my principal would come over the announcements every morning, and he would lead us in, he would read a Bible verse to us, usually a psalm. Then he would lead us in a prayer, and then he would lead us in the singing of a patriotic song, and that's how we started our day. That was at a public school. Now, that doesn't sound weird to us, because that's kind of still how we do it at VCS, right? Pretty much the same. But does that happen in a public school now? No. That principal will be fired today, wouldn't he? Can't do that. So because of that stupid interpretation by the Supreme Court 50 years ago, here's some things that happened. Now, this is just off the top of my head. I could look up thousands of these. Just off the top of my head. That's why a high school football coach got fired because he prayed after a football game. He didn't force his players to pray with him. He just took a knee and prayed on the field after a football game. Got fired. Why? Well, obviously why? Because that football coach was trying to establish Christianity as the official religion for America. No, he wasn't. But I'll tell you what he was doing. He was exercising his faith freely, wasn't he? But he got fired for it. That explains why one of the stories, the craziest one I've ever heard, is a history teacher in California, a U.S. history teacher, I can relate to that, got fired because he put Declaration of Independence on the bulletin board. Wait, he's teaching U.S. history. The Declaration of Independence gave birth to the United States, but it said, it mentions God. Can't have that. Can't have the students learning about that. Kind of hard to tell the story of America without mentioning God. How do you teach U.S. history without the Declaration of Independence? He got fired because it mentions God. Because obviously, he was trying to establish Christianity as the official religion for the whole country by putting the Declaration of Independence on the bulletin board. Sixth grade boy, I think it was a sixth grade boy, 6, 8 years ago, maybe less. His school was trying to promote reading. Reading's a good thing. Get kids excited about reading. So once a week, one period, they would have a free reading period. And you could bring in whatever you want to read. Magazines, Dr. Seuss, Harry Potter, whatever you want to read. He brought his Bible. Teacher took it from him. Said, you can't have that. Got punished for that. Because that was in a government school. And you know what that sixth grade boy was trying to do? He was trying to establish Christianity as the official religion for the whole country. No, he wasn't. But he was exercising his faith, wasn't he? That explains why a couple years ago, I think it was a 9th grade girl, got suspended from school because a classmate sneezed and she said, God bless you.
What?
Well, of course, because she was establishing Christianity as the official religion for America.
Doesn't everyone say that?
No, she wasn't. She was exercising her faith, and I'm not even sure she was doing that. She was just being courteous, right? But she mentioned God. You have that. Now, those are extreme examples, but they happen in America. That's not what our founders meant, is it? You know how we know? Because, you know, the guy who was the chairman when they wrote the Constitution, a guy named George Washington, also known as the father of our country, our first president, he once said, it is impossible to rightly govern without God in the Bible. Well, he ought to know. He wrote the Constitution and he says you can't govern without God and without the Bible. Now we're trying to do just that. Trying to remove God and the Bible from all the public life. You can have that in your private life, but not in public. No, that's not what they meant. That's what the Supreme Court said. That explains why at Christmas time you can put a nativity scene in your yard because that's your house, but the town can't put one in the public square because that's establishing Christianity as the official religion. No, it's not. What it's doing is it's acknowledging our Christian heritage as Americans, Well, it's not forcing anyone to be a Christian, is it? Same with a cross display. Can't be a cross displayed in public. Can't be the Ten Commandments displayed at courthouses. All those things have been ruled unconstitutional because of the Establishment Clause. But what they keep missing is the free exercise clause. What about that part? And what about our Christian heritage? It doesn't mean it's an official religion, but it is part of our history. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Even celebrating that. Because that's one of the things that made us great is our Christian heritage. But you're welcome to come here and live and worship how you want. You don't have to be a Christian. But please don't be offended when we acknowledge that's the heritage of our country. This is the great evangelist Billy Graham, and he's by far not the only person to say this, but this is the image I could find. All right, the founding fathers, when they wrote our Constitution, they were meant for us to have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. So all those examples that I just gave you is trying to protect people from the Christian religion. That's not what our founders intended. They wanted us to have freedom of religion. You can be in America and be an atheist, a Muslim, a Buddhist, whatever. That's fine. No one's going to bother you. No, the government is not going to punish you for that. Right? But that doesn't protect you from other religions, like Christians. That's still the majority in America, and that's our heritage. Always will be. You can't change history. That's what happened. Judeo-Christian ethic is what we based our government on. Big difference between freedom of religion and freedom from religion. Nobody has the right of a freedom from religion. We all have a freedom of religion. Any questions on freedom of religion? We could go all day on that one. Chrissy?
So, a player on the Orlando Magic team, during the national anthem, he was standing and everyone else is kneeling like that Black Lives Matter. And after the game, he got to the news, got interviewed of like why he was standing instead of kneeling, and like he went on and on about the Bible and like saying even though like we have this like Black Lives Matter thing, it's still like you're supposed to be representing God. That's why we stand and do the pledge of allegiance and like prayer and like.
That's kind of overlapping freedom of religion and freedom of speech,
and
which is going to be our next one.
The press treated him bad and they didn't do anything, like the NBA or his coach didn't do anything.
All right. Does the Bill of Rights protect you from the press? No. Does it protect you from public opinion? Nope. Does it protect you from your neighbor? Nope. Did the government arrest him for what he did?
No.
No. So it did protect his rights, didn't it? That's all we're saying, is the Bill of Rights protects you from the government. All right, so I'm glad you brought that up. It does not protect you from anyone else. All right, unfortunately, that might hurt his reputation in the public. It might help his reputation in the public. Who knows? Right? That's a whole different story, but all we know is the government can't punish him for believing in the Bible or for speaking his mind, which is going to be the next one. Let's go on to the next one. The next basic freedom in the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment, is the freedom of speech. So let's read it. There's a semicolon after free exercise thereof, right? This is where English class and grammar and sentence structure and reading comprehension, all that good stuff comes in, so we can be good citizens. We need to know how to read. All right? Congress can make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So again, any level of government can't make a law to tell us what we can and can't say. You have the God-given right to speak your mind. Not only can you think what you want to think, but you are free to express what you think. You are not just entitled to your opinion, you have the right to express your opinion and share it with others, whether they like it or not. You have the freedom of speech. You can do it in verbal, spoken word. You can do it in a song. You could do it in a story. You could do it on a blog. You could do it on a tweet. You could do it with a symbol like this one. This bracelet I wear every day is my freedom of speech. It's a message. I have a right to it. It's you could do it with a sign, right? You have the freedom of speech. Again, you don't just have a right to think what you want to think. You have a right to say what you think. Guaranteed in the First Amendment. Protects you from who? First Amendment protects you from who? The government. Keep that in mind with freedom of speech. That's all it protects you from. The government can't punish you for your message. So, do we have the freedom to criticize our own government out loud? Well, yeah, absolutely. Do we have the right to criticize our president? How about make fun of our president? Is that all right? Yeah, that's freedom of speech, isn't it? Does that ever happen? Like every second of every day, right? People are making fun of President Trump or whoever it is. Do we have a right to make fun of Joe Biden?
Yes.
Yeah, thank goodness, because I do that constantly. I'm sending memes to my friends. Joe Biden. I have a First Amendment right to do that, right? Now, how about burning an American flag? Do you have a right to do that? Yes, you do. It's freedom of speech. You can totally disrespect the American flag, and you can't be arrested for it. Now, does the First Amendment protect you from me? No.
That's scary. What are you saying?
I go burning the flag where I can reach you. Well, might be a hurt coming. Now I might get arrested for that, but that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother issue. But again, the First Amendment doesn't protect you from me or your neighbor. Alright, so you say something that somebody might not like, you might get punched in the mouth, but you won't get arrested. Alright, that's all the First Amendment saying is the government can't punish you for your message. Colin Kaepernick, when he kneels during the national anthem, or any of the other players in any of the other sports, when they do that, do they have a right to do that? Absolutely. Sure, that's their First Amendment right. I don't like it, but do they have a right to their message? Yes, they do. I find it offensive, but does that mean they don't have the right? No, of course they have the right. Could they get fired for that? Yeah. Their boss isn't the government. First Amendment doesn't protect you from your boss. Alright, my boss is Dr. Hunt. If I start telling you that God is dead, you think he's going to let me keep working here? No, he's going to fire me, isn't he? Can I say, wait a minute, freedom of speech? No. No, because he's not the government. It doesn't protect me from him. Now, could I be arrested for saying God is dead? No. I have a right to say stupid things. Alright, but I could sure be fired. Alright, so teenagers, you get a job at Taco Bell at the drive-thru window, and you're handing out tacos, and with every taco you hand out, you say, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. That's a nice message, isn't it? Some people you're going to be making their day, but what are your boss going to say? You're fired. Did he violate your First Amendment rights? Did he violate your freedom of religion rights? No, he didn't. The First Amendment, the Bill of Rights, protects you from who? The government. Now, if the police come and arrest you for saying Jesus loves you, then your rights have been violated. If Colin Kaepernick gets arrested for kneeling for the American flag, I'll be on his side. Even though I think his message is stupid and I disagree with it, he has every right to do it, and I will fight for his right to do that. Right? It's different when it's the boss, your neighbor, is a lot different than the government. That's all the Bill of Rights is saying. All right, let's keep going. Does the Bill of Rights protect offensive speech? I love teaching this to your generation. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing you, but I am criticizing your snowflake generation. All right? Sensitive feelings, so easily offended. Our generation
Jessica
makes fun of your generation. That's our freedom of speech. All right? Yes, the First Amendment absolutely protects offensive speech. In fact, that's the whole point. That's why our founders put it in the First Amendment. We don't need an amendment to protect this kind of speech. Good morning. Have a nice day. We don't need an amendment for that. We need an amendment to protect things that other people might find offensive. It's pretty simple. If you want freedom of speech, well, guess what? Freedom isn't just for you. Think you know freedom is for everybody else too, right? Who made you a tyrant? You don't get to determine what messages are okay and which ones are not. There is no such thing, if you take nothing else away from today, remember this. There is no such thing as the right to not be offended. You have no such right. Show me. Where does it say that in the Bill of Rights? There is no such right. Other people's freedom of speech rights are way more important than your feelings. And guess what? Your freedom of speech rights are way more important than other people's feelings. Offensive speech is absolutely protected by the First Amendment. That's the whole point of it. I'll give you some examples of things that others might find offensive. Make America great again. Does that offend some people? Yeah.
Yes.
Try wearing one of those red MAGA hats to certain neighborhoods in America. You're going to trigger people. They are going to be offended. Do you have the right to wear it? Yes, you do. They don't have a right to not be offended by that. They need to get over it. All right? Do you have a right to put a Trump sign in your yard? Yeah, you know what? Does your neighbor have a right to put a Joe Biden sign in his yard? Yes.
Sadly.
Absolutely. All right? That's freedom goes every direction. Even offensive speech. Here's some real offensive speech. You are a dirty, rotten sinner, and you deserve to spend forever suffering in a place called hell unless you put your trust in Jesus. Think someone might be offended by being told they're a sinner? Yeah, the gospel is offensive. That's the point of the gospel. That's what Jesus said. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to heaven except through me. That's kind of offensive. In fact, that's the last thing he told you to do before he went into heaven. Go into all the world and tell them they're going to go to hell unless they believe in me. No, he said go spread the gospel. But isn't that what the gospel message is? Yeah, so aren't you glad we have the freedom to express that? Because that's the most loving thing you could ever tell someone. Think about it. If you've ever tried to do that, you're going to offend somebody. I've tried to do that. They get offended when you tell them they're sinners. They get offended when you tell them you're going to go to hell unless you put your trust in Jesus. But isn't that the most loving thing you can tell them? I mean, how about if I know that? I believe that. I know it's true. It's not my truth. It's the truth. Remember that? But I don't tell anybody. It sure wouldn't want to hurt their feelings. I want to hurt their feelings, but I'm going to let them go to hell forever. Yeah, it protects offensive speech. That's the point. If you want to have the freedom of speech, then you have to allow everybody else the freedom of speech. Because if the government can silence your message, I'm sorry, if you want the government to silence somebody else's message, then that means the government could silence your message too. And that's no fun. That's what freedom means. It's not just a one-way thing. It's not just for you. All right, how about hate speech? Does the First Amendment protect hate speech? Yeah, absolutely, it protects all speech. Now, again, your rights stop when you violate other people's rights. But hurting their feelings is not violating their rights. Alright, your freedom of speech is more important than their feelings, and vice versa. Alright, so hate speech, although I might find it offensive, right? I find what Colin Kaepernick and those other athletes do, I find that offensive, but I will fight for their right to do it. I also wish they get fired, but that's not the government, right? I don't want them to be punished by the government, because I want my freedom too. How about racist speech, racial slurs? Is that protected by the First Amendment? Absolutely. All speech is protected. Now, what does that tell us about the person using that kind of speech? It tells you what you need to know about them, right? They're racist, hateful fools. Keep your distance from them, but they have the right to do it. In fact, one of the most difficult tasks I was ever given was as my job one day to protect a group of vile, vulgar, hateful, racist people with mean messages on signs, yelling racial things to other people on the other side of the street. And those people were getting angry and yelling back at them, and I didn't blame them. I sided with those people, but my job was to protect their constitutional right to free speech. Felt like shooting them, but apparently that's against the law too. So of course I had to protect their rights. Alright? I'm totally offended by their message, but do they have a right to it? Yes, in America they do. Well, it's meaningless, right? It just tells us what fools they are, but they have a right to it. Again, keep saying it, if you want to have the freedom for your message, you have to allow other people the freedom for theirs, even if you disagree, even if you're offended. You don't have a right to not be offended. Their freedom of speech is way more important than your feelings. All speech protected by that First Amendment. We can criticize our government. We can criticize each other. Now, remember, it doesn't protect you from your neighbor. Watch your mouth, right? You offend somebody, they might get angry, right? You might find yourself in the hospital